Are we underestimating the potency of inflation to be sticky and remain for longer?
Well, we're no longer using the word transitory, but I think that's been put to rest, I think, in the last couple of days. Inflation's going to be remain elevated for the foreseeable future. How long that is, we don't know, but, it could be a couple of years.
I know, but this is a nightmare for central banks. So if it's not transitory, at some point they were trying to figure out, transitory could mean actually 6 months, 8 months, even a little bit longer. Do you think they'll have to act sooner than they want to?
Well, certainly there are at least 10 or 12 central banks around the world that probably are watching this much more closely. If you look at the Fed's nuances from their last minutes, probably suggests that they're going to raise rates certainly twice in 2022, but maybe it'll be earlier. I mean, there are some people talking about higher inflation than what we've seen in the last quarter and the next quarter in the United States, so we'll have to wait and see. You saw the inflation data coming out earlier today for the UK.
Blow out.
I think that probably means that's going to rattle Andrew Bailey's cage a bit at the Bank of England, and maybe he's going to have to look again in December about the rate decision.
I mean, what does it mean for fixed income in general? Are we going to see a big repricing, or has a lot of this stuff already been priced in, especially after, the Bank of England disappointed a lot of the markets last month?
I think markets have pretty much priced in a lot of these. I think what's really going to be interesting is to see, this is uncharted waters. We've got a lot of things, Francine, and you're hearing this discussion at this conference about the whole question of inflation and the variables affecting inflation. We're talking about a lot of investment in green. We're talking about deglobalization. We're talking about supply chains with China being disrupted and how that affects prices elsewhere in the world. And, of course, we look out the window here in Singapore and we see a lot of ships in the harbor. Very fewer queuing there than in Los Angeles or in Shanghai, but it's a big issue.
Do you still expect a lot of these, energy shocks to go elsewhere? So these supply chain issues to remain with us for longer? And what does that mean for the economy going forward?
Well, you've got an overlay now on energy shocks, certainly in Europe. You have Mr. Putin and the whole issue with Poland and Belarus, and he's going to use his role as sort of the key czar of Europe's energy security to play he has a big seat at the table, and that's going to affect a lot of uncertainty on energy pricing, certainly in Europe.
What do you worry about the most, John? I know you speak to, all chief executives, many people from many walks of life. You're also an expert on China. Are we misreading the U.S.-China tensions and how they could develop going forward?
I think the most important thing about the dynamic on China is America has a strong view about China, and there's a strong domestic voice about issues it has with China. China has a view about America, and there's a strong Chinese voice in China about America. I think they need to both take a little more time to better understand each other. There's some disconnects right now. I think Biden is trying to engage more, but there's still some disconnects.
Where are the main disconnects, and actually what can be done? So if you have a disconnect at the government level, does it still mean that companies work with each other on a corporate level, so on a private level between U.S. and China, for example, on green technology and things like that?
Well, China has been very much ahead of the curve, as we all know, on green technology. I mean, 77% of the world's batteries, particularly relating to green applications, are manufactured in China. So I think there's probably, if I had to wave my arms and say what would I really like to see, I'd like to see more integration between Chinese and American manufacturers relating to solving green energy problems, because each one of them has certain segments of products and services. If they were more integrated and more collaborative, I think you would accelerate the way that some of these solutions were actually achieved. And I think we're beginning to see that dialogue here. I think you're going to see more of that in the next 6 to 12 months.
So this is not like a supremacy, this is not a battle for ultimate supremacy that we're seeing between the two countries?
Well, I think there's a lot, we talk about the Industrial Revolution and what happened in Europe and America in the Industrial Revolution. 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. The Green Revolution is going to take decades to really come into full swing. I think we've been spoiled by the fact that COVID being the first sustainability shock we had a vaccine in 12 to 15 months. We had a number of vaccines. We now think that we're going to come up with really credible technologies efficiently, expeditiously for climate. We are, but it's going to take years. And we just have to pace this over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And the transition from brown to green is serious, but it has to be done as a transition and not absolutely cutting off one and embracing the other, particularly if the second one isn't really well developed.
What are you most concerned about that we're underestimating? So we talk about inflation, we talk about the energy costs, we talk about geopolitics, and I know it's very difficult to predict a black swan event, but what's on your mind that we should talk a lot more about?
I think we probably are underplaying the role that the digital revolution is going to have on human behavior. And whether it's artificial intelligence in medicine, whether it's decision-making in the investment field, how that's going to have an impact on the world. I think it's artificial intelligence, virtual reality. It's going to change a lot in the next 2 to 3 years, probably more than we realize. And it's also going to have a big impact on education.